Okay, so we took the kids to the library, and one of them got sick, and now everybody in the house is sick. And so if I look very red around the nose, I'm trying very hard to make this video because I was trying yesterday and I couldn't stop sneezing and it was no good. So I'm gonna try again today and hopefully I make it through. Hopefully I don't sound like I swallowed a bunch of gravel. I wanted to talk about, I was online, I was reading through Shout Your Abortion stories, and some of them are really sad and some of them are really heartless and callous, and some of them I kind of understand where the woman's coming from. There was one poor woman, she had a tubal ligation. She got sterilized and the tubal ligation failed and she got pregnant despite being sterilized. I can see how that woman would have a certain degree of a complaint there. She might have a problem there. But there were so many stories that I read where I don't think the women should have gotten abortions. There was one woman, she found out that she was pregnant and she was thrilled to be pregnant. She was thrilled at the idea that she was going to have a baby, but she also said, I can't remember exactly how she worded it, but basically, but then I tried to be rational and I realized that I wasn't ready to have a baby yet. And I looked at that and all I could think is, you're not being rational, you're rationalizing something. If you want to have the baby and if you're excited to have the baby, maybe you should have the baby. And then I read another story, and it was a woman who was in her mid-20s living with her fiance. They wanted to have a baby someday, but now just wasn't the right time, so they got an abortion instead. Really? Really? Like, I don't understand it. It mystifies me. Excuse me. I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get through this. It mystifies me. When I was a little girl, when I was very young, my mom has this interesting thing she does where she constructs these ideas about possible futures that are bad, and then she worries about them excessively. And so, for example, when I turned 21, I started hanging out at the bar every night. I wasn't hanging out at the bar, I was working at the bar, but I thought a good enough lie to tell my family would be, oh yeah, I'm 21, I'm an adult now, I'm going to go out to the bar and I'm going to hang out there and meet people and hang out with people. And so I was going to the bar every night, you know, to work, but my family didn't know that I was working. And my mom was terrified that I was going to become an alcoholic. And at some point I finally looked at her, I was like, Mom, I don't drink alcohol. How am I going to become an alcoholic? And she was kind of like, well, you know, I don't. And she gives me something along the lines of, well, you might get tempted to drink some alcohol someday. Which, I mean, that's never going to happen. I've had one official voluntary alcoholic beverage, and that was right after my abortion when I looked at it and said, that's it. I'm not pregnant anymore. Screw it. I'm having a drink. But I mean, other than that, that was one drink and that was it. And it was a very, very girly drink. My husband mixed it up for me because I was like, you know, let's just do this. And that was the last time I've drunk alcohol, and I don't know if I'll really ever drink alcohol again. It's not my thing. But she was terrified I was going to become an alcoholic just because I was in the vicinity of a bar. Just because, you know, just because. And so she had this pattern that she would do that was just hilarious to watch. You know, if you do this, then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then your life's going to be ruined. You know, if you work in a bar all night, or if you're hanging out in a bar every single night, sooner or later you get tempted to drink alcohol, and then you'll drink the alcohol, and then you become an alcoholic, and then your life will be ruined. Don't have sex before you get married. Because if you have sex before you get married, then, you know, sooner or later you're going to get pregnant. And if you get pregnant, then your life will be ruined. So I was a little girl, and I had been warned about the dangers of, you know, getting pregnant before you're married and all that stuff. And my parents were actually really, really good at giving me a lot of sex ed, but like good sex ed, as opposed to, I don't know what other kind of sex ed there is. But I mean, there was a lot of biological education that went in there. So Mom was explaining to me how small an egg is and how the sperm are like swimming, you know, through the vaginal canal to try and get to the egg and all this wonderful stuff. And it was really interesting and it was really scholastic. And so it kind of made it less awkward and uncomfortable, which is a really great thing that my parents did for me. I'm very grateful for that, because then I knew about this stuff and I met a lot of people who didn't know about this stuff. But yeah, my friend, she had an older sister, and her older sister got pregnant as a teenager, unwed, and had a baby. And I was just shocked to find out about this. I was like, well, you know, because my immediate reaction was, oh my gosh, her life is ruined. I was like, well, she's a teenager. She's not ready to have a baby. And my friend was like, she looked at me and she said, and I wish I could remember her exact words, because up until the point that I had my first kid, I remembered exactly what she said. And then it's kind of faded because I haven't used that information in a long time. But she looked at me, she was like, you know, no one's ever ready to have a baby. But when it's time, it's time. I think those were her exact words, actually. And, you know, can I talk? Please tell me I can talk. Fast forward many, many years. I'm not even talking to that gal anymore. And I'm married to my husband, and it was time to have a baby. I was in my mid-20s. I was very healthy. The dancing, exotic dancing, for all that it can be bad, and there are a lot of bad things that come with exotic dancing if you let them. If you don't drink the alcohol, if you don't do the drugs, if you don't sleep with like all the random dudes, if you're safe and, you know, don't do crazy crap, that job will make you as healthy as a horse. And I have been dancing for a long time, and I met my husband and we got married, and I was very, very fit and very, very healthy. And I was in my mid-20s at the peak of my fertility, and I looked at it and was like, it's time. And I'm really glad we did that, because now that I'm in my 30s, we're trying to have more kids, because we've had 3, but we want more. And we're having issues with, you know, trisomy 18 is the result of a bad egg. We had a bad egg, and the genetic information of that egg was corrupted, so the entire baby was affected. And you can't cure that. And your fertility does decline as you age. I think it starts to decline rather dramatically at 35, but that information could be incorrect. I know it's gradual. It's a gradual decline, but usually they do their estimations. So a lot of studies that talk about fertility, I think the reason that it seems to decline sharply at 35, I can't remember if it is an actual sharp decline or if it's just that that's where the numbers lined up, like, you know, 30, 35, 40 onward. And so that's where they start noticing the decline if they're charting people's reproduction. I can't remember. I've heard different things from different sources, and I don't know. I do know there comes a point where you're just not as fertile anymore, and I'm rapidly approaching that point, which also, by the way, I've said this, and people tell me I'm a liar, and it's not a lie, it's true. You stop looking quite as sexy as you get older. Hard to believe, I know, but goodness, I sound terrible. I'm so sorry. I'm just happy I'm not coughing with every other word. But yeah, you know, I didn't want to get caught in that fertility decline because we had waited to solidify our finances. And I'm really glad we didn't wait around for that, because now my fertility is in question. You know, our chances of having a trisomy 18 baby before this last pregnancy were 1 in 3,000. They've risen dramatically since then, because we've had one. Now we might have another. That risk is only 1 in 100, but 1 in 100 doesn't sound nearly as safe as 1 in 3,000. So we'll find out what happens. The good news is, at this point, we've already had 3 kids. If we have to stop trying to have more kids, it's okay. I look at these women who, I look at these women who are in their mid-20s, and they're having abortions because they're just not ready to have a kid. And it's like, you're never going to be ready. You're never going to feel ready. Unless you've had, unless you grew up in a big family, or you had a lot of social support, or you just really, really love babies, and you've probably encountered babies before this point, if you feel like that. If you're very familiar with babies, you're not going to be quite as afraid of having a baby. Me, I didn't know much about babies. I just knew that I wanted to eventually have a family. And eventually was right now, because I was there. I was at that point in my fertility, and it was time. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. I was scared. I was afraid to get pregnant. And then we lost that baby. So then the second time, I was even more afraid to get pregnant, because there was every chance, not likelihood, but every chance that my second tube would fail as well, and then we would be sterile. I was terrified. And then I found out the pregnancy was viable. And then I was afraid to become a mom, because I had a not great childhood. And I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to protect my children from the kind of childhood that I had had. And I remember being in the delivery room, and the nurse she was telling me it was time to push. She was telling me, okay, just push and imagine your baby coming up into the world. And I was trying to imagine anything other than a baby coming up into the world, because I was terrified of becoming a mom. And she was born, and she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in all my life up to that moment. And it was worth it. The fear, the doubt, the worrying, all of that. It was absolutely worth it. And I'm very, very grateful that at that point in my mid-20s, even though I was terrified, I said, let's do this. I decided to ignore my fears and my doubts and have a baby. And I understand if you are in your mid-20s, or even if you're younger than that, and you find out you're pregnant, it's going to be terrifying, especially if you're not ready for it. I mean, I was terrified enough, and I was the one volunteering for this to happen. But sometimes I read through these stories about, these women, they're telling their stories about having these abortions, and they want to be moms. And they're at a point in their lives biologically where it's time to be a mom. And they're aborting their children because they don't feel ready. Honey, you're never going to feel ready. That's kind of the point. I'm going to get better. I'll talk to you guys later.